Welcome, listener. This is Sebastian Nothwell here today with Luna Day.
Hi.
And Noah Hawthorne.
Hello.
To discuss the much maligned miscommunication trope.
I don't know whether to groan or be like, yay!
Yeah, no, I think it can be fun. Very much.
I think it's both.
Possibly the most hated trope in all of romance, when characters, usually the romantic leads, fail to communicate clearly for whatever reason, and this failure of communication has plot consequences. Usually these plot consequences drag the story out longer, which may explain part of why it's so reviled.
I agree.
So why do we hate it? Let's get hatred out of the way first, and then we can bask in positivity.
Okay, this is my theory, and this is because I was reading a book, buddy reading with a friend, and it has big miscommunication in it, so I'm partially stealing their words. But the thing about the miscommunication trope is no one communicates in real life. It kind of hits too close to home for people, I think. And in real life and in characters, people are morally complex, they have flaws. So I don't think we're supposed to like it. I think we're supposed to learn from it. And that kind of, like you say, takes time and maybe drags out the plot a little bit. But if it's done right, that's what it's supposed to do.
That was such a deep answer, Noah. I'm sat here thinking, because it drags it out too long and it prevents them from, getting to the kissing.
That's so true, though.
Get together already, guys! For me, it's just an impatience thing. And I think, particularly when it's done badly, it feels avoidable. A simple communication would solve all of these problems and progress the story or the plot. Maybe I'm just impatient, but that was my hot take.
I hate it when the miscommunication requires characters to behave unlike themselves. Someone gets hit with what TV Tropes calls the idiot ball and needs to be stupid for the plot to work.
Yeah.
Petty for no reason.
Yeah. I also hate when the miscommunication occurs out of nowhere at the 3/4 mark just to prolong the story with a third act breakup.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people get too married to that particular plot structure regardless of whether or not it makes sense for the characters and their circumstances.
Yeah.
And thirdly, I hate when the miscommunication seems to indicate that the characters are ill-suited for each other, because communication is key in any relationship. And if the characters suck this bad at communicating, it may make them seem incompatible and force the reader to root against their relationship rather than for it. It kind of can turn into an everyone sucks here situation where it's like, I don't want them to get together. They don't have what it takes to make a romance last.
Sounds like something you read recently.
Oh, you know. But when do we love it?
So I think that communication and trauma doesn't go well. And I love traumatized characters, and I like seeing them heal. And I think that characters that have a lot of flaws or baggage learn to communicate, and it's relevant to the arc and the plot. The story is when I like it and when I think it's done well. It's for a reason, or there's secrets, or there's a rivalry or something. It's not just because. And like you say, it's anti of all of those things is when it's done correctly. When they learn things and it's for a reason.
When there is a narrative justification for this to be happening.
Yeah, not just to make the story longer. There's other ways to do that.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I think not just character rationale, but also I read a book recently where it was very much part of the world building as well. There were justified reasons why these characters were miscommunicating based on external information they'd been given from other parties in the book, from historical events, not just from the love interest, but they had sort of backstory reasons to be miscommunicating. And it worked really well because it was a really deep-setted misunderstanding. And so it really took quite a bit of time for them to then kind of get over their preconceived notions of one another and sort of work through that and resolve the conflict.
Yes. When it's baked into the world building.
Yeah, relevant to the plot.
Exactly. That is key. It needs to be relevant.
I love it when, harkening back to why Noah hated it, when it's realistic because people talk past each other in real life all the time. So if the characters are too perfectly on the same page for the whole story, it can feel stilted and fake. So having realistic, grounded miscommunications can make both the characters in the story feel more three-dimensional. And I love talking at cross purposes because when you have the dialogue doing double duty and there's a vast gap between the characters' understanding and desires versus what they're communicating, it's like the reading equivalent of watching someone juggling flaming hoops, and it can be very thrilling. And I also love dramatic irony because when the reader knows something the character doesn't, the reader gets the thrill of being in on a secret and on tenterhooks for the reveal. It builds anticipation for when this whole thing's going to explode.
Absolutely.
Tenterhooks mention.
I was gonna say that!
It has been 0 days since our last tenterhooks incident.
Yeah, it makes you want to root for them instead of wanting to... I mean, you might want to shake them a little, but it makes you entertained and want to root for them and want to see the communication resolved as well.
I agree, but I do think there is a very fine line. It can be resolved too quickly, and you're like, oh, like the payoff wasn't quite there because you didn't get the chance to build that anticipation. But also it can go on for too long. Like you're literally at the point of banging their heads together and like, you really do need to resolve this now because it's getting tedious.
Yeah.
So I think there's a very fine line to getting it right.
A very delicate balance.
Indeed.
But oh, what a joyful balancing act to watch when it's done well.
Absolutely.
Do we have any examples of when we think it was done poorly?
Oh, I just have a list of when it was done well. I didn't think of that.
I can give poorly examples.
Okay, I'm leaving that to you too.
Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, yeah.
Don't at me, Shakespeare, but like,
Yeah.
the I thought she was dead so I killed myself feels very flimsy and tacked on. And perhaps it is unfair to critique him when he cannot defend himself, but I don't know, I feel like that could have used a third draft or so.
Spoiler for Romeo and Juliet if you have not read or watched any versions of it.
It's been a few hundred years, okay, if they haven't read it by now or heard of it.
In a similar vein, Wuthering Heights
I knew that was coming. I knew.
has a very early example of, it's not the first, it's certainly not the only, but the classic, I've overheard a conversation and walked away right before the important part of the conversation that changes everything about what I've heard and recontextualizes what I got out of context.
Yes.
Because the whole reason Kathy and Heathcliff don't get together is because Kathy says, I could never marry Heathcliff, and Heathcliff overhears that and said, well, fuck that, I'm leaving. And then immediately after he leaves, Kathy says, but I love him anyway and really want to marry him. So it's like, okay, well... In Miss Bronte's defense, she was very young when she wrote this, and the rest of the novel hangs together very well. But that particular example of miscommunication driving the plot gets tiresome when you see it repeated throughout literary history over and over and over and over again. It's cheap, it's lazy, I'm bored.
And I feel like in real life, if you're eavesdropping and you're going to hear until the end of the conversation, unless there's an outside force, you know, the guards are coming or you're about to get caught or something. If you just leave before hearing it all because you don't want to, that's your own fault. You have to be made to leave, I feel like. There has to be a good reason why you didn't just stick around to hear the end of it.
And it's not just because your feelings got hurt. Like, you have to...
Yeah. You're going to want to hear the whole thing. We're all curious by nature.
Exactly.
Did you have any bad ones, Luna?
Do you know what? I was racking my brain for this. I had one. I couldn't remember the specifics of the miscommunication. I just remember the vibes of how much I hated it. And...
I've forgotten everything but my outrage.
Literally, it was a Hades and Persephone retelling. I just remember thinking, like, the entire time, a simple conversation would resolve this, and it went on for almost the entire book. The book started, literally chapter 2, there was miscommunication, and it went on until like 90% in, and it made the entire book so tedious because it was such a nonsense miscommunication. I honestly can't remember what it was over now, but I just remember thinking the entire book, like, this is so stupid, just resolve it already.
And they probably had a million opportunities to talk about it as well.
Literally, and I think there was even a point where they even kind of got together, like they were doing the stuff and like still not communicating, and then like having like angry sex and still arguing about this thing that wasn't even a thing because they both completely misunderstood each other. And yeah, I just remember finishing that book and being really angry and not picking up the rest of the series because it just annoyed me so much.
Oh no. Now, it seems like we have more examples of when it works well. So when have we enjoyed miscommunication?
I will always use every opportunity to shout out the Big Bad Wolf series by Charlie O'Hara. There's two big reasons why there's a lot of miscommunication. There's trauma. Our main character, Coop, is a traumatized guy who has a lot of things going on that he doesn't even really realize. He's got a lot of biases. So in this world, there's werewolves. It's like kind of contemporary, but there's werewolves. And there's just a lot of information he's been fed by the Bureau that's not really true. And he realizes throughout the books what he's been told is a lie, what's actually real. And the love interest also kind of, because of his own trauma and deal, only puts out what he wants Cooper to know at first. And what I really like about this series is the way it handles the miscommunication and how they work through it. So book 1, we're kind of getting over our biases. Book 2, we're kind of learning about each other. And book 3, I mean, there's just a lot of unpacking, and it's not just all solved by one conversation. I mean, yes, it's building and their communication skills are getting better, but it's just very realistic to me, the way that they kind of open up and become more vulnerable with each other. Because they're an established couple throughout. It's all the same couple throughout the series. And even though they're together, there still can be miscommunication that happens, because in real life, you're not always going to get along or not always have perfect communication with your partner. And I really liked the way that did that. And then one I read recently is Sorcery and Small Magics. This one is a combination of like rivalry, unreliable narrator, and some magic fuckery going on. It's kind of the same thing. The more the characters are becoming vulnerable with each other, the more that they're letting on about themselves and realizing like, hey, maybe I did kind of hate you, but I got a lot of my own stuff going on. It's not me, it's you kind of a situation. One Night in Heartswood is kind of, I don't want to say the simplest.
Would you believe that is also on my example list?
There's a lot of assuming, going on. Assuming makes an ass out of you and me kind of a thing.
But it's also, it makes so much sense for the setting and their circumstances.
Exactly.
Because, if I may, One Night in Heartswood is a medieval romance between Ralph Barden and Pen de Foucault, both sons of English nobility. Pen is betrothed to Ralph's sister, but flees on the eve of his wedding, and Ralph goes to track down his sister's betrothed and drag him back to the altar lest she be ruined. However, because it's medieval times, they've never met before, and consequently when they stumble across each other in the titular Heartswood, neither has any idea of who the other guy is, and both pass themselves off to each other as servants to their respective families, which makes sense because Pen is a fugitive, and Raph is trying to track down a fugitive without attracting too much notice. So lying to each other about who they truly are is reasonable even while they're falling in love. And it's the very rare secret identity mix-up plot that actually makes total sense for both the setting and the characters.
That actually sounds amazing.
Yeah, like it would be solved by a simple conversation, but the simple conversation wouldn't occur to them because they don't know who the other actually is. Like, so it could be simply fixed, but not really because of the circumstances.
Exactly.
Strange and Stubborn Endurance.
Oh, I love that book.
It's kind of like a misinformation/trauma thing between them. It's an arranged marriage as well. So there's just a lot going on, and the miscommunication in that is done well. And even as the book unfolds, they're communicating more, but their circumstances still kind of make it difficult. And then the last one is Taste and Golden Iron. This one is like gossip and prejudice, like biases, unwilling to kind of want to see the truth, or, you're acting on what you're being told and your gossip and your assumptions. And then as you're getting to know this person, you're finally allowing yourself to be like, okay, maybe I was wrong, kind of a deal.
All wonderful stories where, again, the miscommunication makes sense.
It does.
Context is everything.
So I read recently Dragon's Dawn by Sam Band and W.M. Fox. And I love this, but I really did want to bash their heads together. And this is a classic example of how their environment helped cause the miscommunication. So the ruling family it's got a lot of history of violence, and there's even been rumours of betrothed being thrown off of Dragonback, to sort of get rid of them. There's a lot of espionage and spying and politics and all of this. and the sort of rebellious warrior prince character gets betrothed sort of against his will and ends up with this very sort of young courtier who's very sort of delicate, and he just assumes that this courtier is here to spy on him and probably eventually kill him. And then the courtier is like, oh my gosh, I've been betrothed to this big, scary, violent prince. He's got a real reputation. Like, on the battlefield, he's got, like, this huge dragon. He's just going to, like, throw me off the dragon if I can't, like, please him, if I'm, you know, not of any use to him. And both of them just go into this marriage thinking, like, one of them's going to kill each other. And it could have been solved day one when they had a nice little chat. But they don't. It goes on for almost the entire book. But it's so juicy, and I just really loved it, and I just thought it was a really good example that it wasn't necessarily the characters not giving each other the right information. It was that pre-existing notion of each other from external factors and backstory and historical events.
There's a lot of push and pull as well. Like, they start to get vulnerable and think about opening up and telling the other, you know, hey, maybe I actually think you're kind of nice or whatever. And then something environmental or plot-wise happens, and it's not like it's like it's keeping that miscommunication clamped back up, you know?
Yeah, it almost reaffirms their misunderstanding of the situation. Like, oh, well, it must be the bad thing that I think it is because this thing keeps happening, or this person said that. And it kind of reaffirms their biases throughout until they actually sit down and have that sort of candid conversation. But yeah, I just thought that was really well done.
Beautiful stuff.
What about you, Sebastian? What's your example?
Well, One Night in Heartswood, already discussed, but my other example is Heated Rivalry.
Oh.
Which is a contemporary romance between professional hockey players Shane Hollander and Ilya Rozanov, with many very good reasons for multiple miscommunications between them. One, there's a language barrier. Ilya's first language is Russian, and while he already has serviceable English early in the season, he doesn't develop full fluency until the final few episodes, and even then there are gaps in his vocabulary, so that makes it difficult for him to fully express his true thoughts and feelings even when he wants to. Secondly, autism. Shane is autistic, and this makes it harder for him to pick up on subtle social cues, leading him to miss certain things that may seem obvious to autistic people. 3 is the toxic hypermasculine hockey culture. Homophobia is rife in the hockey world, and hooking up with a fellow player is already risky enough without talking openly and honestly about your feelings. And 4th, it is legitimately extremely dangerous to be queer in Russia, and frankly, given this hurdle, it's amazing that Ilya is willing to tell Shane his true feelings at all. So when Ilya and Shane spend the first 5 episodes talking past each other regarding the depth of their growing emotions, it makes total sense, and makes it all the more satisfying when they do get their shit together and declare their true feelings.
And if I can add as well the time period.
Yes, very much so. The series begins in 2011 and ends in 2017, so that's the 2010s era of homophobia, which is its own beast.
Yeah. And it's like the first, when they finally get a moment to be together, and it's not just a quick, you know, get to be there for a couple hours maybe, when they actually get a chance to be together, and the first thing they say is like, first thing Shane says is, let's be honest with each other.
Absolutely. And I think it's telling that both of my examples are queer romance because, yeah, when the world is against your love, it becomes that much harder to openly declare it, and that will very naturally lead to miscommunication. I feel like it's much more believable than in most straight romance when society itself is not creating a massive barrier between the characters, and in most of those, there's no reason for the characters not to communicate, and therefore miscommunication feels less like a natural conclusion of the setting and more like a compatibility failure between the characters.
I would say probably the way it would work best would be historicals.
Historicals, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
I didn't even think about my own book for that.
Speaking of which, do we have any examples of miscommunication from our own works?
My 2 would be Pham and Rook. And they are not communicating because one literally cannot talk about his mysterious reasons for only being around for a short time and his weirdness that he's got going on. And the other one has got lots of trauma and is slow to trust, and he doesn't really trust anything good happening in his life. So there's that, and then the other one is The Voice of Wild Places, which is historical, and they former friends that kind of left things on a bad note, and there was a series of events that basically led one to believe he was being shunned by another, and the other one thinks that he was being ignored all this time. So when they finally meet again, there's a lot of these things that they think the other one thinks of them. Basically, they go in with these biases, and as the story unfolds, they kind of realize, like, you never really thought this way about me, and you never actually really ignored me and left me behind, kind of a deal. And there's also a lot of learning about identity and sexuality, and that kind of prevents Watt from being able to communicate fully because he's not really communicating with himself fully.
Kind of has to look inward before he can communicate outward.
Yeah.
I have a few. I think they're quite a bit lighter than the ones in Noah's books. I mean, the Fae books naturally set themselves up for miscommunication because the Fae method of communicating is tricky, and so it means that things get misconstrued quite a lot and misunderstood. But in the Thoreus books, there's a character that I absolutely love who's very shy and gets quite a lot of social anxiety and really struggles to communicate his thoughts clearly. And when communicating with his love interest, doesn't quite say the right things all the time. And this does lead her to believe that she's not welcome in his life. And it results in a very sweet sort of conversation later on in the book when they actually declare their feelings for each other. But it goes on for quite a while that they're like, oh, like this person doesn't like me. And it's more down to sort of his shyness. And I find him so endearing. So I feel really bad for him for not being able to get his point across eloquently. But yeah, I think there's lighter themes of it in my books than in some other examples that we've given today.
Just the blinking guy meme, because I'm thinking of your first book and going, overall, I wouldn't say light, but they are definitely the lightest part of that book. And I do like their scenario because they are just so sweet. And there is, like, you know, a simple, tender misunderstanding, and you are rooting for them, and especially for the male character, because yeah, he's definitely got some neurospiciness going on and anxiety, and he deserves everything.
He really has, bless him. I just want to wrap him up in cotton wool.
He's the most underbaked cinnamon roll.
Oh,
He really is underbaked. Oh, bless him.
Well, in my book, Hold Fast, we've got 1890s England. Evelyn Winthrop is a whaling harpooner who just inherited a baronetcy, and Morgan Turner is his estate agent, tasked with turning him from a sailor to a gentleman. Along the way, they fall in love, but this is complicated by the return of certain figures from their unknowingly shared past, one of whom is Morgan's abuser, and Morgan does not tell Evelyn about the abuse until the end of the novel, leading to much miscommunication between the two of them. Given that Morgan is a Victorian Englishman, it stands to reason that the cultural disinclination for showing weakness or even emoting would prevent him from trauma dumping on his employer. And given that Morgan's abuser is Evelyn's old friend, it also stands to reason that Morgan would not immediately assume he would be believed if he were to tell all, particularly when he's been raised his whole life to believe the abuse was his own fault.
Ouch.
So that's a lot heavier than anything I've got in mind.
On a lighter note,
Jeez.
we have Fiorenzo. In the fantasy realm of Halcyon, Fiore is a lowborn courtesan who aspires to find a wealthy elderly patron who will perish before he tires of Fiore, and in perishing, will leave Fiore all his money to live happily ever after in financial security. Enzo is an aristocrat who falls head over heels for Fiore, and Fiore for him in turn, but he and Fiore are the same age, so Fiore thinks he's too young for his plans and thus not a secure long-term option. Fiore being convinced that anyone younger than elderly would discard him within the decade and throw him out penniless. So Fiore, deep in denial about his own feelings, turns Enzo's offer down, and Enzo, being a genuinely good guy, takes him at his word with no hard feelings. And in fact, because he loves Fiore so much and wants to see him happy even without him, Enzo decides to make it his mission to find an ideal wealthy elderly patron for Fiore.
Oh, goodness.
Oh,
He's so helpful.
Thanks.
I love him. I love them both.
Which leaves Fiore freaking out between suppressing his own feelings and trying to actually follow through on his plan. So, in short, Enzo takes Fiore at his word because Enzo is at his heart a good person who truly loves Fiore, and Fiore refuses Enzo because Fiore knows firsthand just how swiftly and harshly a courtesan can fall from favor and end up starving in the gutter, so they end up at odds despite the fact that they both truly want the same thing.
Love it.
I feel like that line right there, at odds despite wanting the same thing, is also like a quick definition of the miscommunication.
It only took us half an hour to get to it.
That needs to be like the subtext of this episode.
Yeah.
If only we had communicated more clearly and succinctly from the start of this episode, but alas.
Oh,
We were doomed from the beginning.
this whole episode has been a miscommunication. I love it.
Final thoughts on miscommunication?
Give it a chance. As long as it's done well, it can make you feel things. If you're gonna write it, give it a good reason.
I both love it and absolutely hate it. But echoing Noah's thoughts, it can be done really, really well. And if you're going to write it, give it a good reason, not just some nonsense that could be resolved in 10 seconds.
Exactly. Well, thank you for listening to this episode, despite our miscommunications. And we hope you will join us for more Right Here, Right Queer next week.
Well, thank you.
Bye. Thank you.